Your video game collection is worthless. Alright, maybe not worthless, but it's not going to be worth nearly as much as what you may think it is. JT. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another episode of Smash JT. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day about our video game collections and what we were thinking about their long-term value and why we were collecting and why we were keeping these games if we weren't even able to get around to playing them. And it brought up a good question about what are our video game collections worth to us? And I say to us because really, ultimately, that's the only value these are going to have. Yeah, sure, you can sell some of the games off on eBay or yard sales or Craigslist, but let's be real, how many of us actually have a game collection where we're actively selling games all the time? Now, I think about selling games all the time, but I don't necessarily always sell games. I've heard people sell off their complete collections. I know Captain Retro did it a while back, and now he's slowly accumulating games again, but that's the exception to the rule when it comes to collectors in video gaming. They don't sell off their collections because it's what their passion is. It's what they live for. It's what I live for. I love having all my games nice and tidy and put together and adding to the collection. It gives me some sort of self-worth in a weird way, some sort of value to my life where these inanimate objects that do not do anything for me somehow give me some closure and make me feel all warm inside by having them all around me. People who aren't collectors would hear that and be like, man, what a loser. Hell, even people with collectors probably hear that and say that. But in all honesty, that is truly how I feel about game collecting. And as far as the long-term value of these games, I've spoken to people who think this could be their retirement. That they could sell these games off when they get older, and instead of investing in the stock market or investing in a 401k or anything like that, they buy video games their whole life and think that they'll be worth something by the time they get older. And to that I have to say two things. One, why would you sell them when you're older if you're not going to sell them right now? Something tells me a collector now will always be a collector your entire life. And the longer you hold on to these games, the harder it would be to actually let go of them. And secondly, who's going to be buying these games? Because when it comes to collecting anything, if we look throughout human history, with a few exceptions, with some rare antiques or some crazy expensive things because of like kings or monarchs in other countries created these things that were really valuable, outside of those things, collectible things come and go and really aren't worth anything to the next generation. Growing up with the Super Nintendo and Secret of Mana, I remember thinking, if I ever have kids someday, I'm gonna play Secret of Mana with my son or daughter and have them experience what I felt while I was playing this game. But I wasn't thinking about what would be out at that time in the future and how games would evolve and change into something, let's be honest, more exciting to younger eyes. The graphics are more sexy, for lack of a better word. People want those new graphics. They want the new gameplay on the new systems, on the new TVs, and the older games, unfortunately, are kind of falling by the wayside. Now, my son still plays retro games, but he always looks forward to the new things and what the new graphics are, and always seems to be more drawn to them. I mean, take the new Spider-Man, for example. He would much rather be playing the Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 than the Spider-Man on the N64, or any other Spider-Mans ever created. And that's not necessarily his fault, because I'd rather be playing the new Spider-Man than the older ones. So my point being, the next generation growing up is going to have a whole different view of what's valuable and what they want to be collecting, and what we, our generation, millennials and before, have been collecting will be essentially worthless to them. It's kind of like baseball cards in a way, where I don't know if you guys ever collected baseball cards, but I was a huge baseball card collector back in the day, thinking that I'd be able to retire off of these baseball cards and basketball cards, a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. Oh my god, it's worth $50. Now it's worth $75 and $100, $150. First off, it's one card, and secondly, it's not really worth that much in the grand scheme of things, especially if you consider how much money I spent on baseball cards growing up and what the value of, in this instance, one specific card is worth, and then finding someone to pay that value for it. And my dad always used to say, it's not worth anything until you sell it. And that has really held true with me my entire life. Everything we own has zero value. Until you find a buyer for it, it's essentially worthless. Look at the older baseball cards. Name one baseball card you'd want to have outside of a Babe Ruth card that was from the generation prior to us. And I kind of feel like that's what's going on with collecting now, where the next generation and the generation after that may be able to name like, oh, I want the Nintendo World Championship card because that is the game to get. But outside of that, who knows what the future holds? I mean, right now, people are able to play ROMs on their PC, and every year there are new ways available to be playing these older games on newer systems, and even homemade stuff, or stuff on Kickstarter, or even Indiegogo, which I don't even like to go there, but my point is, there are new devices, what seems like every month coming up, on how to play these older games that don't require the actual hardware or software to play them. You just have the code to play it. I feel like the next generation is going to look at this and almost laugh at us saying how we thought these games would be worth something. When you look at CDs and how there's disc rot, and a lot of these, even Sega CDs, are already rotting right now to the point of not being playable, you wonder what 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 35, 40 years down the road holds for these games that are not even halfway to that point right now. And you're telling me that they're going to be worth something when they're not even playable 40 years from now? I really have a hard time believing that. As far as my collection is concerned, I'm not really sure what I plan on doing with it. I guess handing it down to my kids, but I don't even know if they're gonna want it. It might just be useless junk to them at that point because, like I said, who knows what the future holds and what they'll be able to be playing and playing on 20, 30 years down the road from now. Everything that we have in our hands right now may not have any kind of value whatsoever. And in a way, that's kind of depressing because I never really looked at it from this angle, but taking a step back at how we value antiques and how we value older items and how previous generations used to have trains that were worth hundreds of dollars, and our generation could care less about trains because there's better technology out there now. And I feel like that's exactly what's going to be happening. Baseball cards, trains, Barbie dolls, any kind of dolls, or even more contemporary stuff like those Thai Beanie Babies, or Pogs, or Cabbage Patch Kids, or even Garbage Pail Kid cards. Everything that I could think of that we used to collect, I mean, yeah, it has a little bit of value if you really want to seek it out and add it to your collection of whatever you have in your house, but the only reason I could see somebody doing that is to get back a piece of their childhood. Our kids don't have that as their childhood, so they're not going to care about it when we move on from this planet, and I don't think there's going to be that much of a demand for the supply that everyone is keeping in pristine condition these days. There's going to be so much supply out there that it's just going to be worthless in the grand scheme. But that's where I stand on collections and the value of them. But I wanted to throw this out to you guys. Do you feel like your collection is actually worth something? And if so, do you ever plan on selling it? Or do you plan on handing it down to your generations following you? Or do you have anything idea-wise on what you're going to do with it after you move on from this world? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.